In March of 2024, you wrote, "The murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue." That'd be Laken Riley you were talking about?
Laken Riley was an unusual case.
Yeah, here, let's have a look. Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get, no, you say.
Of course it's an issue. It's a tragedy.
So what do you mean by your
murder is an
post?
issue.
It's not an actual issue, meaning we shouldn't be paying attention to it. Senate's wasting its time this week on the Laken Riley Act that would address the circumstances of her murder. What's your advice to us? We just discontinue those proceedings now?
I think the Laken Riley Act could do a lot of harm. It would allow me to say, oh, this person shoplifted, and that would be enough probable cause to get somebody deported.
Interesting. You're here. Who invited you to this committee hearing today, Mr. Isacson?
The minority party.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're here as a spokesman for the minority party. I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue. She's dead because of migrant crime, right? Let's try something else. Here, do you know who this is? Do you know who this young man is?
I do not.
Travis Wolf, 12 years old, from my state, murdered by an illegal migrant who was also, like Jose Ibarra, illegally paroled by the last administration.
Is your expectation that zero migrants?
Let me tell you what my expectation is that those who commit crimes in this country will be appropriately dealt with. And that we should not be allowing migrants who commit crimes into this country, and that, yes, migrant crime that kills people like Travis Wolf, whose death was shocking, whose death is inexplicable, indefensible. I actually do think, yes, I think it's an actual, wait a minute, it's my time, Mr. Isacson. I actually think, and I want the record to be clear on this, that migrant crime is a real issue. I think the Laken Riley Act is absolutely necessary. In fact, I propose an amendment to the Laken Riley Act that will cover people like Travis Wolf. I think that ICE ought to be required to detain those illegal migrants who commit violent crimes against children, like Travis Wolf. And yes, I happen to think, as a former prosecutor, I happen to think that their violent murders are actual issues. And the fact that you would say otherwise, sit here and advise the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea, that the whole thing is not an actual issue, it's all just what, made up, I think is outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that you were invited here to give this testimony is stunning to me, I have to say. Absolutely stunning to me. Mr. Cuccinelli, let me just ask you, something else that Mr. Isacson has said is that the Remain in Mexico policy was a program of death. A program of death. Is that your experience, having seen it implemented? A program of death?
As part of implementing it, my answer would be no. It was quite the opposite. And as I said in my statement, that the deterrent effect for illegal aliens to come that was gained by the migrant protection protocols, Remain in Mexico program, prevented a lot more abuse, child abuse, abuse of women on the journey, and death along the way than any of the crimes that occurred addressed to the people where the people in Remain in Mexico were the victims. So anytime we have illegal immigration going on, we have victimization of that population. It would be my view, and I think the dollars play it out, especially as you've seen since 2019, that the idea that the cartels benefited from the Remain in Mexico program is relatively ludicrous compared to the alternative. And the alternative we've lived with the last 4 years has been the greatest enriching of the most evil, vicious people in the Western Hemisphere in the history of this hemisphere.
Yeah, I wish the Remain in Mexico program had still been in effect. When the killer of Travis Wolff crossed the border and was paroled illegally into the country, he might still be alive today. And if that's not an actual issue, I don't know what is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think congressional hearings on border security serve as the primary stage for debating the boundaries of executive discretion and legislative mandates. On January 16, 2025, the Senate Homeland Security Committee highlighted the profound human and legal stakes of these policies through the lens of recent tragedies. To understand the 2026 legal landscape, we must first analyze the Laken Riley Act, which was signed into law in late January 2025 following a period of intense legislative debate. The act, named after a 22-year-old nursing student killed in Georgia, represents a significant expansion of mandatory detention under the Immigration and Nationality Act, INA. Previously, mandatory detention without bail was primarily reserved for aggravated felonies. However, the Laken Riley Act expands this to include non-citizens who are charged with, arrested for, or admit to crimes such as shoplifting, burglary, or larceny. From a legal perspective, this creates a lower threshold for detention, allowing Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, to take individuals into custody before a formal conviction is reached. This is the core of the probable cause debate. Proponents argue it prevents future violent crimes by detaining low-level offenders, while critics argue it risks detaining individuals based on potentially false accusations. During the hearing, Senator Josh Hawley confronted witness Nick Isacson over the actual issue of migrant crime, citing the 2023 death of 12-year-old Travis Wolff in Missouri. The legal focus here is on 8 U.S.C. Section 1182, d. 5, the parole authority. The debate centers on whether the executive branch has overextended its authority by paroling hundreds of thousands of migrants into the country on a case-by-case basis for urgent humanitarian reasons. Critics argue that this mass parole system led to the release of individuals like the suspects in the Riley and Wolff cases, while the current 2026 administration maintains that parole is a necessary tool for managing border surges within limited detention capacities. The hearing also provided a critical update on the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, commonly known as Remain in Mexico. As of early 2026, the program remains a cornerstone of the deterrent strategy. Educationally, the MPP requires asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their U.S. immigration court cases are pending. The reciprocal agreement with Mexico is a key component of this policy. Witnesses at the hearing debated whether the program is a program of death due to the dangers migrants face in border cities, or a program of safety that prevents the enriching of cartels and discourages the dangerous journey north. The 2026 data shows that when the program is active alongside high-speed removal protocols, migrant encounters at the border have hit historic lows. Furthermore, the Laken Riley Act introduced a novel legal tool, state standing to sue. Section 4 of the Act explicitly allows state attorneys general to bring civil actions against the Secretary of Homeland Security if they can demonstrate that federal failures to detain or remove certain individuals have caused the state financial or safety harm. This provides a statutory path for states like Missouri, Texas, and South Carolina to challenge federal immigration decisions in court, a power that was previously highly restricted under the Supreme Court's 2023 ruling in United States v. Texas. In summary, the January 2025 Homeland Security hearing reveals a government in a state of enforcement realignment. From the mandatory detention of shoplifters to the statutory right of states to sue the federal government, every provision of the Laken Riley Act is a lesson in how a single tragic event can fundamentally shift the standard of care in immigration law. By understanding the link between executive parole, mandatory detention, and the Remain in Mexico program, viewers gain a clearer view of the security landscape in 2026. These proceedings remind us that in the 21st century, the definition of a ready and capable border is one of the most pressing challenges facing the American Republic.